Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and I am here today to do the H tag. The H tag was created by Jim over at Jim's Books, Reading, and Stuff. I was tagged by Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics. And for the H tag, I am adding my own prompt as prompt number 1. First prompt. H is for houses. What kind of housing arrangements do you have? And I'm saying this prompt because housing arrangements have totally taken over almost everything in my life right now. I own a home in Western Washington, south of Seattle, and that house is going up for sale this week. And previously, I have been getting this house ready to sell. I've gotten ready for the videographer to make videos. I've been getting rid of everything in the house that I do not need. And just last weekend, for the other house, because not only am I selling this house, I am buying a new house in Virginia. This house has not been built yet, but I did get a tour this weekend of the stick framed version. And this is basically the house with the roof and the windows, but none of the drywall. And you get to inspect the house. So I had to fly out from Washington, Virginia this weekend to inspect my house. Now what I'm going to do is give you a very brief 1-minute video tour of my walkout basement, because the walkout basement is where I'm going to have my library. Currently, I have 9 tall Billy bookshelves. And all of those 9 Billy bookshelves will fit in the new walkout basement. I will also get to fit my 3 short Billy bookcases. And here comes the big surprise. I am going to have room for probably 3 or 4 more bookshelves, because it is just going to be a ginormous walkout basement. So here is the tour of my to-be library. Now this again is an unframed wall, and there is not a lot of sound because I was not talking when I made these pictures. All right. Okay, next prompt. H is for Harry Potter. Would you prefer to travel to Hogwarts in a flying car or the Hogwarts Express? Neither. I do not believe in magic. I do not like the Harry Potter books. I do not like the Harry Potter phenomena that stemmed from the books, nor from the movies. I do not like Harry Potter. Now, there's a lot of reasons why I do not like Harry Potter. First of all, I think they're just silly stories. Stories of little boys saving the world or Hogwarts, whatever, from a big bad evil not musician, magician, is just not an exciting story. They're dull. They're silly. I originally read them because I was in a book group, and one of the women in the book group decided that she wanted to read the Harry Potter books. And this was back when there were only 3 Harry Potter books. And she says, let's figure out what this big phenomenon is all about. So I agreed, and I read them, I thought they were kind of, they're kind of cute, but nothing special. A year later, when the fourth Harry Potter book came out, she says, let's read the fourth one. I wasn't for it, but everyone else was, so I read the fourth one. And then the book group dissolved, as book groups sometimes do. And for whatever reason, when that fifth book came out in paperback in Costco, I picked up a copy. I tried to read it on my own, and I was just bored silly. There was a story about a chosen one and prophecies, and just once I would like the prophecies to be total horseshit. That people read the prophecies, they follow them, they think, oh, we've got to follow this to make the prophecy true. But the guy who made the prophecy, he was smoking crack. Okay, maybe not crack, because crack's not hallucinogenic, but whoever made those prophecies, he was smoking something. Those prophecies are totally wrong, false, and has no bearing in the real world whatsoever. That's what I would like to see prophecies about. So if Harry Potter was the chosen one in the prophecy, they're going through, they're getting all their plans done, and in the beginning of the seventh book, which I never read, Harry Potter tries to fulfill the prophecy, and the big bad wizard kills him. That's about a third of the way through the seventh book, and all the people in the book going, oh, Harry Potter's dead! What are we going to do? And then they have to figure out how to get rid of the big bad wizard without Harry Potter and without a prophecy. That's what I would like to see, but I don't think that's the way the real series ended. So anyway, a thumbs down for Harry Potter. Next prompt. H is for horror. Why do kids love horror? Or here, you could add your own favorite horror titles. When I was a kid, I loved horror. I think I mentioned this. The first book I read on my own was H.P. Lovecraft short stories. I fell in love with the Bantam editions, which shows the heads. I believe it was the tomb, and the head was splitting open. I think bats were trying to get out and being held together by a band and a lock. A kid could not do better in sixth grade than H.P. Lovecraft. And I went on. I read a lot of Stephen King later on in life and other horror authors. There's something about horror that just fascinates a kid. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it's the sense of mortality and doom that could get you. But I did love them as a kid. As I grew older, I grew less enthused with horror. But when I hit my 40s, I decided, I'm going to write a horror novel. And I started reading lots of horror books, a lot of them in the leisure horror line and some of the more limited editions. And I read these and I said, I'm really not enjoying these horror novels. And I decided if I could not enjoy the ones that I was reading, what kind of luck would I have writing one on my own? And I never did. And I think that's a good thing because I think it would have been a truly terrible book. Next prompt. H is for Hemingway. Hemingway or Fitzgerald. Now, Jim, when he did his original tag, he said Virginia Woolf. So I'm going to sneak in and say William Faulkner. Now, out of the two authors, I have read far more Hemingway than I have read Fitzgerald. I have read, for Fitzgerald, The Great Gatsby. I have read This Side of Paradise. Was that the right one? I think so. And I read a short story, The Diamond as Big as a Ritz. I am not enamored with Fitzgerald. I just don't see the great appeal that some people have with him. The Great Gatsby was a good novel. I would not classify it as a great novel, but a very good one. For Hemingway, I have read most of Hemingway's novels. I have not read Across the Woods and Into the Trees, which supposedly, if I understand everyone who makes comments, that book is absolutely dreadful and no one should ever read it. I do like his short stories. The Short Happy Life of Francis Maycomber. I like Soldier's Home. I like the one with all the nadas in it. That one is not coming to me. A Clean, Well-Lighted Place. I believe that's the one with all the nadas in it. I would give a big thumbs up for Hemingway short stories. The Sun Also Rises is fine. A Farewell to Arms is better than A Farewell Sun Also Rises, I think. I have read For Whom the Bell Tolls, The Old Man and the Sea, and To Have and Have Not. That's about it. I would definitely go with Hemingway, but not a strong Hemingway. Next prompt. H is for hardback. Do you prefer hardbacks or paperbacks? Both. Each one has its place in my collection. Right now I am sitting in front of my hardback collection. They are a joy to me. I love having them. I love looking at them. I love reading them. Paperbacks are also good. I do keep my bookshelf separate. I keep my hardback books on one set of shelves and my paperbacks on another. I do that simply because I think they look nicer on the shelf that way. But I like them both, and I could not pick one over the other. Next prompt. H is for Hardy. Which is your favorite Thomas Hardy novel? Jude the Obscure. That was my first Thomas Hardy novel, and is the one that I like the most. I have an affinity for Jude Fowley. I can understand exactly where he was coming from. I read that book initially in my early 20s, when I still thought of having a writing career that never took off. And Jude Fowley, of course, had his aspirations to get educated and join the ministry, but that never happened for him. And he had, of course, some very disastrous relationships with women, which I have fortunately not followed in his footsteps. Other than that, I have read the other major Hardy novels, Return of the Native, Far from the Madding Crowd, Tess of the Herbervilles, and there's one other one. I don't remember that offhand, but Jude the Obscure by a long shot. Next prompt. H is for hot. If you are in the Northern Hemisphere, how are you coping with the heat? When I had my house built here in Western Washington, I had it built with AC from the beginning. I know for the most part out here, you don't need AC for most of the year, but I like things cool, so we have HC. Now, one thing I have discovered in my house is that the air conditioner controller is downstairs, and it has just one central location, and that is in the family room. So if I set the family room to 72 degrees, it keeps that room at 72 degrees, but the upstairs can get 8 to 10 degrees hotter. And the master bedroom, for whatever reason, does not have the airflow that the rest of the upstairs has, so that is even hotter. And for the past few nights, my wife has been sleeping down in what used to be the mother-in-law suite when her mother lived with us, and I have been sleeping in one of the upstairs guest rooms with a little more airflow. And that is how we have been coping with the heat. H is for Hunger Games. Do you prefer the Hunger Games or Harry Potter? Now, I have already mentioned how I utterly loathe Harry Potter. I hate the Hunger Games even more than Harry Potter. I read that for the Hunger Games for an online book group, and that book is just a sorry sack of horseshit. That's the kindest thing that I can say about it. And I'm going to go through a couple of things that I really disliked about that book. First of all, when the main character is out and they're selecting the members, or they're selecting the two representatives to go to the Hunger Games, her younger sister is picked. And she immediately volunteers to take her place without a moment's hesitation. And again, that is complete, utter, and total horseshit. I have never seen any siblings who cared that much for their other siblings that they would do that so immediate and without hesitation. What I would have liked to see is the main character with some sort of choice or dilemma or hesitation. Now, again, this book was written for kids, and my suggested plot change is definitely not for kids. But here's what I would have done. The main kid was Katniss. Katniss was a super duper pooper hot shot with a bow and arrow. and she could feed her family by hunting game. Now, I would have scaled down her level of skill. You could still have her be very proficient in archery, but maybe sometimes she wasn't able to catch enough meat to feed her entire family. And what would she have to do to get that meat? Well, she could trade sexual favors with the butcher. And that would be a deep sense of shame for her. She feels inadequate and dirty and nasty. So, when her sister is picked for the Hunger Games, her first sense is not immediately take her place, but, wow, I'm not going to have to sleep with the butcher anymore. I can feed myself and my mother just on my own. And of course, she can have lots of conflict with that relief. And then standing next to her is someone in town who she doesn't know really well. And that person makes a comment like, oh man, that butcher's not going to be happy now. Basically revealing that he knew all along that she was sleeping with the butcher, selling her sexual favors for meat. The whole town knows. It's a small town. That stuff gets around. And she is so shamed and so humiliated that then she volunteers to take her sister's place. I think that would be a much more interesting plot twist. And later on, they also discuss how violent this book is and how horrible it is that kids are killing kids. But Katniss never has to truly do something horrible in this book. I would have liked her to come across one of the other participants out in the woods, pants down to the knees, taking a shit, and she comes up behind this person and shoots that person in the back and killing them. And that's it. She killed him in cold blood because she had to survive. That would have been much more interesting. And then let's go with some other parts. Like later in that book, she of course has a love interest with the other representative from her district. And they say first, well, if both members of this representative win, both can win the Hunger Games. And then later on, they revoke that. And she comes across her other representative, her love interest. And he's cooking something, and she thinks he might be cooking poisonous mushrooms. And what I would have liked to see is her actually believe he was doing that on purpose. So she had to kill him in order for her to survive, or think she had to survive. And only later would she learn that it was just an accident and she didn't have to kill him. Now that would have been an interesting twist. And then at the end, when she's on the train, she is so overcome with grief, she throws herself like Anna Karenina in front of the train and kills herself. And then you're at the end of the book, and the main character is dead. Oh no, what you gonna do for book 2? In book 2, you can have the representatives or the council, whatever, the Hunger Games, substitute Katniss for someone else. So no one else would know that she's dead, and it's a fake. Now that fake would have extreme power over that council, and that could make a much more interesting book. And again, another thing I disliked about that book, those games were supposedly shown live. Now, if I were a tyrant and I was holding these games, I would never show them live. I would say they were live and have a big stream underneath, the camera saying live, but everyone would know it's not live. But if you somehow mentioned that you knew it wasn't live, well, maybe your children are selected next time in that supposedly totally random drawing, because if you're a tyrant like that, you wouldn't have random drawings that are truly random. They would be fixed. That book is shit. Total, absolute horse shit. It also has one of the most authentic Deus Ex Machinas on any book that I have ever read. This is where she's going up against her main rival, and the main rival is given this archer-proof suit. And how is she going to kill him when she can't pierce him with one of her arrows? Well, these groups of mutations come out and tear him apart for her. Deus Ex Machina. Total, complete horseshit. The Hunger Games is perhaps one of the worst books that has ever been written in the history of this world. Why it is so popular, I don't know. I once listened to a series of lectures on music. It's called Music as the Mirror of History. It describes how music and history are intertwined. An example is like Beethoven. Beethoven wrote his Eroica Symphony during the Napoleonic era. It was originally supposed to be called the Napoleon Symphony, but that music and that symphony is tied completely to that era. Now, whatever mirror is held up, I don't know the relationship, but something has made that book popular. And I don't know exactly what it is, but it's crap. Complete, utter, and total crap. H is for honey. Pooh was addicted to honey. What is your sweet addiction? Well, if it's foods or drink, I'm going to have to say tequila and beer. I love my shot of tequila every night before I go to bed. It's a very good way to wind up the evening. And I have to admit, sometimes that tequila is a double. On a hard day, after a long days of work, it might be a triple of tequila. But that would be my indulgence. H is for the Handmaid's Tale. Have you read the book? What do you think of it? The first book of the Handmaid's Tale is excellent. When I first read it in the 80s, I was not ready for it. I was in my 20s, and I got too worked up, and I just didn't like it. But when I read it as an adult, I came to appreciate that is a truly great novel, especially how it depicts how religion can take over. And I did watch the first miniseries of the Handmaid's Tale. I thought for the most part it was well done. The one mistake that TV show did was they named Offred. They should not have named Offred. It was a much more powerful book when her name was not known, because they took it away from her. They took away her name. But that TV show gave it back. I think that was a mistake. The second mistake, and this is by far the far greater mistake, is that they continued that TV show afterwards. They created a whole new set of storylines. I tried to watch it. Well, I did watch it. I was watching the first few episodes. I said, nah, it's becoming very much like Perils of Pauline. Offred was getting in trouble, and then she was getting out of trouble, and then she was getting into more trouble, and she was getting out of trouble. But for some reason, who were they called? The Masters of Gilead weren't punishing her like they were punishing everyone else. The girl who got her eyes gouged out for talking back in class, and people got the hands lopped off, but nothing ever happened to her. Of course, they couldn't do that to Kate, or whatever the actress's name was. They had to let her stay the same. Bad mistake, I thought. I did stop watching it when my wife and I decided to stop watching it. But then her best friend wanted to talk about that show. And so we finished watching the episodes. And it ended just, oh my God, it's just ridiculous ending if you've seen that. It just, why couldn't they have just ended it like they at the first season? It'd been much more powerful. Supposedly there's a third season and a fourth season, maybe. I don't pay attention anymore, but I'm never going to pick that up. And as for the sequel, The Testaments, well, I won't say it was a terrible novel. It was the weakest of the 8 books by Margaret Atwood that I have read. It was too much influenced by the TV show, and I just was not impressed. And I can say right ahead is you can skip that novel if you haven't read it. H is for Hopper. What are your thoughts on the works of Edward Hopper, the American painter? I am, of course, very familiar with his most famous work, Nighthawks. That is an iconic picture in American art, and I like it very much. Jim has pointed out some of his other paintings in his video, and I like them. I like them. I have never made any sort of study or of Edward Hopper, but if there were an event, an art show that showed his paintings, I would definitely go visit him. So that is the end of the H tag. I'm sure almost everyone has been tagged for this. Who do I want to tag? I'm going to go ahead and tag Miss Reads a Lot because she's a lot of fun to watch, and maybe she hasn't been tagged by someone else. Well, anyway, thanks for watching. Have a good evening, and goodbye.